People across the U.S. have been casting their final ballots in the midterm elections. Voting has closed in several U.S. states already, and the stakes are high. Closely fought contests across the country will determine the balance of power in Congress, state legislatures, and governorships.
All 435 seats in the House are up for grabs, as well as 35 Senate seats. The results will be telling of U.S. President Joe Biden's first 2 years in office and set the tone for the rest of his current term. It will also have massive repercussions for the U.S. leader's legislative agenda.
Now, for more on the midterm elections, we're joined by Craig Varoga, CEO of Varoga & Associates. Craig has worked on 4 Democratic presidential campaigns in the past. Craig, let's start with the president then. Joe Biden isn't on the ballot today, but is it fair to say that his political future is at risk, from his ability to push through his legislative agenda to even his re-electability in 2024?
Look, I think that depending upon the results, his legislative agenda is a serious risk. I think that what we're probably going to see tonight or in the next day is that Republicans will win the House. And it's unclear what will happen in the Senate. But yes, that'll make it harder for President Biden to get anything through Congress, because you have to get it through both the House and the Senate. So that will be very difficult. What happens in 2024, that's a long way off, but I'm sure you'll have some additional questions about that as well.
It's a long way off, Craig, but people are thinking about it, including former President Trump. He keeps hinting of some sort of big announcement, presumably around his third run for office. What impact has Mr. Trump had in shaping these midterms? And what would a Republican triumph mean for his potential 2024 bid?
Look, I mean, everybody expects him to announce in either 7 days or 8 days from now. I mean, maybe as soon as next Monday. He's made that clear. He's going to run. He wants a rematch with Joe Biden. That will complicate things, I think, for everybody. It's going to be difficult for him to adjust to the fact that he's not president, but it will also make it really hard for the Republicans in Congress to say that they're doing anything independently. It will allow President Biden to have a foil, but it also means that everything is going to be seen in the context of 2024. And it probably means that President Biden, has to make a sooner decision or a quicker decision maybe than he originally had planned to make.
According to the stat site 538, 185 Republicans running for House, Senate, and governor seats in this year's midterm elections have denied the legitimacy of the 2020 election. How dangerous is that for these midterms in America's democracy more broadly?
Look, I think it's very dangerous. I think it sends the wrong signal to the world. I also think it sends the wrong signal throughout the United States. It's a genuinely and deeply tragic thing that's happening. It will make it very difficult to do anything. And I think that if some of the people who are going to be elected, if they had been in office 2 years ago, Donald Trump would have probably succeeded in overturning the election, despite the fact that he had lost it. So, yeah, that's a big deal, and it's going to become continue to be a major deal everywhere. And Americans who pride themselves on their political traditions are going to be really hard put to explain, how that happens. I don't think they're getting necessarily elected on that issue of being election deniers. I think inflation and crime and other issues have mattered a lot more, but that's the thing they really care about.
There have been reports of voter intimidation, Craig, with some people visibly armed, others watching drop boxes, harassing election officials. Have we seen such a threatening voting environment in the past? And what impact could this climate of fear have on turnout?
It doesn't seem to be having a big effect on turnout. The turnout this election should be pretty high. Americans in the last 3-4 cycles have turned out at really high levels. Some of that is because each side doesn't want the other side to win. So it's not so much a civic issue. It's more of a fear issue about the other side winning. But yes, there's always been elements of that, and you can go back 100 years, 150 years and find examples. But certainly in my lifetime and in my career, and I've been doing this for several decades, we haven't seen anything like this before. And I think the danger with people winning office who are election deniers that it may increase.
And if we take sort of a bigger picture view, what do these midterms mean for more international issues like the war in Ukraine and climate change?
Look, I think we're probably likely to see action by the current Senate and House before the end of the year in order to ensure that America's aid to Ukraine continues. It certainly seems to be the case, and I think that for at least 2 years, foreign policy will be driven by Joe Biden, and I think that that's been a lot steadier than the 4 years when Donald Trump was president. But I certainly understand why people would be concerned by the deep partisan divisions that are going on in the United States.
And before we wrap this up, Craig, I want your thoughts on Beijing. The GOP has vowed to put what one Republican described as laser focus on China if they flip the House, particularly on supply chain security and export controls. Could the complexion of U.S.-Sino tensions change after these midterms?
I don't think the U.S. House of Representatives under Republican rule is going to be capable of a laser focus on anything. I think it's going to be very dysfunctional. And certainly they may talk about China in a different way than some, other, elected officials in the United States might. The tensions between the United States or the policy differences between the two countries, are ongoing. They're not going to go away. There's been perhaps a little more continuity between the Biden administration and the Trump administration than either party wants to recognize or publicly talk about. But I think that the United States policies will remain steady on that. And I think we're going to hear a lot of silly things out of the House of Representatives, but I don't think they're capable of they won't be capable of focusing on anything, not just China, but any other issue that you might want to bring up.
Well, thanks very much for your time and your views this morning. Craig Varoga there of Varoga and Associates, who has worked on 4 Democratic presidential campaigns in the past.